This is A View from the Bunker. Now, here's Derek Gilbert.
Welcome to A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. This is a special program. It was unplanned. It just came together rather spur of the moment as we awoke this morning, October 7th, 2023. If you're watching this in the archives, to find Israel under rocket assault as of this recording. According to I-24 News in Israel, 2,000 rockets launched from the Gaza Strip. It may be more than that. We've seen some reports counting as many as 5,000. 250 confirmed dead at this point. Terrorists from Hamas infiltrating communities in Israel's south, the Negev, the communities bordering the Gaza Strip, and just some horrific images that have been posted to social media that we may discuss during this program. It is a supernatural conflict that is being played out in the natural realm, and joining us to talk about it is somebody who was going to be on his way with a group to Israel tomorrow. We welcome to the program our good friend L.A. Marzulli. L.A., we reached out to you today because we knew that you and Peggy were planning to lead a group there. Weren't sure if you were already there or not, so we sent you a text earlier this morning and found that this really impacted your travel plans on short notice.
Yeah, completely. Bob Ulrich called us up around 6 in the morning and said, "Have you seen the news?" I said, "No, I'm not up yet." And Bob said that, Israel has been attacked by Hamas. And wow. So I got up immediately and got the coffee going and checked things. And we were wondering, what do we do? Because we were supposed to fly out here around 2:30 today from Oklahoma City. We're at the Prophecy Watchers Conference. We were supposed to fly out to Atlanta, and then from Atlanta to Israel on Sunday. So we were going to kind of bivouac, have a nice dinner, kind of recoup from the conference and then fly over. And as I was watching the news, I wrote, Leora, remember this is a high holiday for them. So
Sure.
They're not responding because it's Shabbat. They're not responding at all. And we were kind of left hanging for basically 5-6 hours before we finally got a letter from Leora confirming what I thought. Because I wrote her and I said, if Netanyahu had not declared war, it would be a different story, but he has declared war. And the last time I checked, Tel Aviv Airport Ben Gurion Airport was closed, was shut down. So
Right.
We pulled the plug on it very early. Probably by 8 o'clock, we had written all of the people on our tour, telling them that the tour has been postponed, pushed back. We don't know the implications of that. Is it 6 months? Is it next spring? We don't know. But we had a full bus, 50 people signed up, and all that's gone. We've already rescheduled our airfare. So we'll fly back Monday, not Sunday, only because last minute airfare goes through the roof. So we're able to do all that, but it's extremely alarming because what are we really looking at here? What are we really looking at? And I've heard rumors that Hezbollah has jumped into the fray.
There have been some reports from Israel, and again, we've been watching I-24 News, which is an English language news source out of Tel Aviv. They've been very good about keeping up to date on it. Certainly better than the Western news sources like, even BBC's Foreign Service. So I-24 on the ground there, they showed some video from the IDF of Hezbollah. I won't call them militants, call them terrorists, approaching the border on motorcycles and IDF soldiers opening fire on them, basically telling them to stay back, which hit close to home because we kind of recognized the border fence where this was taking place.
I get it.
Back in March, we were in the north of Israel. We visited the northernmost village in Israel called Metula, because it's very close to the site that when you read carefully in the book of First Enoch, where Enoch is supposed to have delivered God's judgment to the weeping watchers. There's a national park there, the Ion Stream, where there's a series of waterfalls as it heads into that valley between Mount Hermon and the Sea of Galilee. And so we were there and we're looking across this little valley through this fence, and our tour guide, whom you know, Yoshai Avatal, who has got a wonderful sense of humor. He says, "See over there, those white vans? Yeah, Hezbollah." What? No, just kidding. But it was in that same region and at that same distance where you could literally throw a stone to the other side of that valley and hit Lebanon. So for us Americans growing up in peace and security, not really understanding the size, the scale of Israel, and how close together things are and people are, It really is a whole different world. Something that we've noticed. I mean, I grew up in Chicago. I grew up in a city, but you grow up, you live in the country now, as we do. Last 8 years living out here in the Ozarks. We got our house here. Then you go a quarter of a mile, there's another house. Go a quarter of a mile, there's another house the other way. You don't see that in Israel because of security concerns. Everybody's clustered together in communities, and a lot of these communities have walls and fences and gates because that's just how they've lived for 75 years. So, yeah, there have also been reports, as we're recording this on Saturday afternoon, that the Taliban has requested that Iran give them passage to allow them to fly over. And this really I found disturbing because I saw these rumors, and then I started doing some digging, and I found, to my shame, that I missed these stories. 3 and 4 months ago, it was known by intelligence sources here in the U.S., this reported by reputable corporate media sources, that weapons the Biden administration abandoned in Afghanistan a year ago have shown up now in Gaza. This was known 4 months ago. And then 6 weeks ago, of course, the Biden administration freed up $6 billion in Iranian assets as ransom money to bring American citizens home. And of course, Iran is a major financial backer of Hamas.
And Hezbollah.
And Hezbollah as well. So this is a very dangerous situation.
Very much so. Very much so.
But from a biblical perspective, what are we looking at here? Do you have any thoughts on how? Are we seeing prophecy being fulfilled?
It's very possible. My eyes are on Damascus for one. The destruction of Damascus around the city. I've shown drone pictures of this. There's nothing left on the suburbs. It's just all rubble. But Damascus proper still exists. If this thing escalates, it certainly appears like it's escalating. Don't know yet, but keep your eyes on Damascus. We need to keep our eyes on probably a 3-prong operation by Israel. They will go into Lebanon, they will go into Syria, and they will completely clean out Gaza. They will, it's scorched earth. I think they'll go into Gaza and take it back at this point. Enough's enough. You got to cut. I said this years ago when I was doing politics, prophecy, and was supernatural. The Lord had told me to step down about 2 years ago because of the political climate that we're in. There's no point in getting deplatformed. Die on a hill another day, maybe, but not that hill. And so we stopped doing PPS report. But one of the scenarios that I proposed years ago was this is never going to go away, and there's only really one solution, and that's for Israel to cut the head off the snakes, plural. They've got to go in, and they've got to really soundly defeat these terrorists, because that's what they are. And it ties into Bill Salas. Bill and I have been, his table's right across from mine, so we're like kibitzing, if I can use that word. I think it's apropos, considering what's going on. We've been talking about this all afternoon. Is this it? Is this the Psalm 83 war? And it just might be. Is this a prelude to Ezekiel 38? It just might be. So, we watch. We're not fear-mongering. We're not engaging in sensationalism or hyperbole, nothing like that. But I'm deeply concerned. And then, of course, you got the wild card. You got the Russians. You got Turkey. You got Russia. So, what are we looking at? And then you got the Iranians with a possible nuke. You just don't, we hope that cool heads will prevail. But, already the death count in Israel is in the hundreds and climbing. And the deal, I remember sitting down when my late business partner, Richard Shaw, and I were doing the Watcher series, and we interviewed Dan Gordon. This is years ago, so it's like 2015. So it's years ago. And Dan came on the record saying, even with Iron Dome, Hezbollah's got thousands and thousands, basically upwards of 200,000 rockets. Many of them have been retrofitted. So you get, Iron Dome can't get them all. So now what are we looking at? And, it's evening over there, so that's when they'll strike at 3 in the morning, 2 in the morning, something like that.
Yeah, it is. For people not familiar with Psalm 83, this was a book that Bill Salas put out several years ago, and he was the first one to really spot this as a possible prophetic future event. And I'll read it here for people who are not familiar with it. Behold, your enemies make an uproar. I'll start with verse 1. O God, do not keep silence. Do not hold your peace or be still, O God. For behold, your enemies make an uproar. Those who hate you have raised their heads. They lay crafty plans against your people. They consult together against your treasured ones. They say, come, let us wipe them out as a nation. Let the name of Israel be remembered no more. For they conspire with one accord. Against you they make a covenant. The tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, that would be Saudi Arabia in Bill's analysis, Moab and the Hagrites would be the Egyptians, Gibal, which is a city in Phoenicia, so you're looking at Hezbollah there possibly, and Ammon, again, Jordan, like Moab and Edom, and Amalek, the Bedouins of the Negev, Philistia with the inhabitants of Tyre, Philistia, the Gaza Strip, of course. Ashur also has joined them, possibly northern Syria, northern Iraq. Those are the regions occupied by Ashur. But Ashur, as I pointed out in my book, The Second Coming of Saturn, also refers to the chief deity of the Assyrians, also known as El of the Canaanites. The Hebrews call him Molech. So you're possibly dealing with an entity here as opposed to a
principality.
a principality, right. They are the strong arm of the children of Lot, and the children of Lot, Ammon and Moab, both were worshipers of a deity very much like Ashur, who, if I'm correct, this is the entity that the ancient Hebrews called Shemiyaza. So is this the beginning of a Psalm 83 war? It could be. I argued or suggested in my book, the Bad Moon Rising, that that could be the precursor to a scenario that leads to Israel welcoming a deliverer who turns out not to be who they think. So I pray that that's not the case, or we're not that far into the prophetic timeline here, but we really won't know for sure until we're looking at this in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, and another complication, a pile-on. You've got the Russian-Ukraine conflict, which is not going well for the Ukrainians, and it's basically a media blackout here. I mean, we're not told doodly squat, but we just keep sending billions and billions of dollars to this war machine for what reason? And recently, Russia was threatening the use of tactical nukes, for just nukes in general. And Europe has basically responded doing the same thing. A lot of saber rattling going on over there. What's interesting to me is the animus has never gone away. It's been hidden under the veil of détente, or let's all try to get along, for lack of a better word. But détente is a great word, and underneath that facade, to use one of Michael Heiser's favorite words, Dr. Heiser's favorite words, underneath that facade lies this deep, deep animus, this hatred, which goes back thousands and thousands of years. So Turkey looks at all this, and it remembers the Ottoman Empire. It remembers before World War I its greatness. All this land was under the Turkish, the Ottoman Empire, all of it. And the Hashemite kings came in and ruled some of it for a while. Now there's only one Hashemite kingdom, that's Jordan. So Iraq and Syria were under Hashemites at one point. All of it's been carved up after World War I, and here we are with the present-day Middle East. So it makes one wonder, what are they thinking? What are the Turks thinking? What are the Russians thinking? What, if any, is our intel doing about any of this? And the fact that, Hezbollah has got tens of thousands of rockets. If they start pulling the trigger, as I mentioned earlier, Dan Gordon talked about this, you can't get them all. So now what does Israel do? Israel has this one stage, I think it's called the Samson option. Yeah, it's been a while since I've gone down this path. The Samson option. And, Samson was tied to the pillars and then, brought the whole thing down. So they have that in place. the Samson option is in place, and that, of course, is if it looks like it's over, then they're going to do something. But here's what the Word of God says: that we know that Israel will remain intact until the second coming. We know that. And we also know from prophecy that Israel will never be removed from their land once they're reestablished. That's prophetic. So, you start to take all that in the prophetic stew, and Israel might suffer, but they could expand their borders like Bill Salas believes in the Psalm 83 conflict.
Right.
To the point where, they don't want to rule in Lebanon. They don't want to rule in Syria. But, can you imagine if Damascus, the oldest city on the planet, is destroyed, or they roll up into Lebanon and they take that? Now we can all go to Baalbek, which is, I shouldn't be saying. I'm already licking my chops, right? But this is very, I would say this, at this point in time, it's very uncertain as to where, like you said, until we get to look in the rearview mirror, you just don't know what we're looking at here.
Yeah, and you're right. There are wheels within wheels here that are working. This may be another front being opened in a wider conflict. Sharon and I talked about that this morning on our PID Radio podcast. That you mentioned Russia and the Ukraine conflict last week. An Armenian enclave inside Azerbaijan. Now, these are nations that are south of Georgia, so the southern Caucasus, basically Russia's southern flank. And they've been fighting over this enclave, which was mostly ethnically Armenian until last week, when about 80% of them went back to Armenia finally, because the leader of this self-declared Armenian republic in the middle of Azerbaijan said, "Okay, we're going to dissolve the republic. It will cease to exist as of January 1st." And that's because Russia, who is an Armenian ally, essentially said, "You will solve this now." Now, I don't know that for a fact, but I'm guessing behind the scenes, because Russia had mediated the conflict between them when it broke out into open war back in 2020. But again, they've been fighting over this piece of ground since the Ottoman Empire broke up. And Armenia and Azerbaijan declared independence. You had these ethnic Armenians in the middle of Azeri territory, and they've been fighting for independence in that spot for a century. Finally, Russia just said, "We're not having this distraction right now. Solve it." And so the Armenians, it was reported about 80% of them have gone back to Armenia as of this point. I think that may have been an attempt by Western agents provocateur, intelligence agencies maybe, to stir something up to distract Russia on the southern flank, and Russia just wasn't having it. This, in turn, may be something intended to distract NATO and the West. And in fact, what's been going on in Africa with the coup in Niger, just the latest in a string of coups across northern Africa from Mali to Sudan over the past 2 years. They call it the coup belt. You look at a map, it's like, oh, okay, basically Saharan Africa from west to east has just overturned in the last couple of years. And in every single one of those nations, you've got either Russian military or the Wagner Group has been in country just before things flipped. Niger is the home of America's largest drone base in Africa. The French just said, okay, we're getting out, we're pulling out our 1,000 troops. You guys, you Americans, you're on your own. All of this, I would not be shocked, LA, if we saw China do something finally against Taiwan right now.
Why not, right? With all the instability, this is the perfect time to go in, because Biden has declared that, we're going to back Israel. We'll see what really happens with that under the Obama administration. Lots of lip service, but when push came to shove, the Obama administration was not sending the parts and the missiles and everything else that the Israelis needed to defend themselves. So it's just, I have a friend that's deep in one of the intelligence agencies. He's not going to send me anything that's classified, obviously. But he, like, as a reporter, as a journalist, whatever, I can pick his brain to some extent. And I am in the process of sort of doing that to get his take on things, where he thinks it's going to go or may go. One thing, it seems like it's a massive intelligence failure from Israel, or is
right.
it? We were talking about this, Bob Ulrich and Bill Salas and others, Mondo Gonzalez and Lee Brainerd, a little powwow thing there. was this deliberate? Because what this will do in a New York minute is to solidify Israel. It will solidify Israel. The
Well, yeah.
who a week ago were saying we're not coming, they're all clamoring now, because now it's just not. This isn't a little skirmish. Their lives, the entire nation, is at stake, and they know that. I mean, they absolutely know that.
Yeah.
I just want to say that our tour was canceled, as I said earlier. When I wrote Aaron and Leora, I said we can't go to Mount Hermon, we can't go to Gilgal Raphaim, we can't go to Nimrod's castle or the throne of Baal, Cave of Pan. We can't go underneath the Temple Mount. That's 6 sites. What are we going to do? Sit in the bus all week? And, you know, a little tour bus like that with 50 Americans in it, what a trophy. So it's just, you know, unfortunately, you know, I turned 73 here in December. So those days of, you know, let's do one for the Gipper. I mean, just not going to get the home. You know, not anymore, folks. Nope.
Yeah. Well, I know we were there back in 2018 when Israel marked its 70th anniversary of independence, and we hadn't planned it, but it was just wonderful, you know, the Lord's timing.
Yeah.
We were there on that day because that was the day the American embassy moved to Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And of course, you might remember Gaza kind of blew up as Hamas declared days of rage against that. But that was nothing. That was nothing compared to what we're seeing here.
Well, this is very calculated.
Right.
It makes me wonder whether the Iranians picked up the phone, you know, and because Hamas is Iranian's proxy in the region, along with Hezbollah, do it now. Do it now. So
yeah, that would seem to be the case. And again, the Biden administration is, I think, recognizing how bad it looks that just 2 months ago, less than 2 months ago, it gave that $6 billion back to Qatar, because there are already official statements out from the State Department and the Department of the Treasury saying, oh no, that money is in a protected account in Doha, Qatar. It hasn't been touched, and it can only be used for humanitarian aid. Right, okay. So when the money is released, when those hostages are released, the money will go to humanitarian aid, and the money that they budgeted to spend for food, they can then, you know, are you telling me they didn't already spend that money for all of these rockets that Hamas has sent? Come on. No, nobody's buying that. I think if there's one saving grace here, it's that we've got a presidential election coming up. Democrats, the squad, I'm watching on X, formerly Twitter, members of the squad like Ayanna Pressley and Ilhan Omar condemning the attacks because they recognize that, oh, if we lose the support of AIPAC, we're going to lose the House and the White House in 2024. And so now they're suddenly saying things to try to backtrack from previous statements. And again, the White House trying to distance itself from the $6 billion in ransom that it gave up to Iran less than 2 months ago. And of course, they're hoping that nobody saw those stories, as I missed 4 months ago, when it was reported by outlets like Newsweek, that Israeli intelligence sources are saying, yes, we're seeing U.S. weapons in the weapons Strip. In the Gaza Strip.
I mean, what do you do with that? I mean, right? How does that happen? You know,
well, yeah, you leave $8 billion in weapons behind in the hands of the Taliban is what you do.
Unbelievable. It's just unbelievable.
Well, thus says the Lord through the prophet Amos, Amos chapter 1, for 3 transgressions of Gaza and for 4 I will not revoke the punishment, because they carried into exile a whole people to deliver them up to Edom. So I will send a fire upon the wall of Gaza, and it shall devour her strongholds. We'll see what happens. Prime Minister Netanyahu gave a statement earlier this afternoon, L.A., and basically said to the people of Gaza, get out because we're coming in. Now, the sad thing is, where are they going to go? Because Hamas won't let the people leave. So where are they going to go? But you've got
they're back to
it just
so where are they going to go? There's no
right. I wonder if this isn't a deliberate attempt by Hamas to provoke Israel with such outrageous behavior. You've got 20 policemen in the town of Sderot killed when the police station was besieged earlier today. You've got social media video of the bodies of dead being driven on the backs of pickup trucks into Gaza and paraded around like trophies. Some of these now, one young lady was identified as a German citizen, a 30-year-old young lady from Germany who was in Israel because they were holding a concert for peace along the border between Israel and Gaza. How is this going to play in the EU? A lot of funding coming to the Palestinian Authority and to Gaza from European nations. How this all plays out, I don't know. It's still early days, but
I want to say one thing here, that the Israelis have been condemned by Saudi Arabia and other Arab states, and they're saying that the Israelis instigated this. So they're already flipping it. They're already flipping the attack.
Sure.
And this was a high holy day. I mean, this is like,
right.
This is it, man. This is the whole deal. This Shabbat is different from any other Shabbat during the whole year. So, this is why I couldn't get a hold of Aaron Lipton until it was over, until sundown. And then, we'll let you know what's going on. But I had already bowed out of a tour hours earlier because we can't go anywhere. There is no tour.
That's something else to remember. I think 2 points here. First of all, this is not unusual. Sharon and I were looking for something like this past week, and I talked about it earlier this week on Skywatch TV, that this was the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War. But I was looking at the Julian calendar, and the date on the Julian calendar in 1973. This is the high holy day today. This is the 50th anniversary on the Jewish calendar of the 1973 war, when Sadat sent his soldiers across the Suez Canal, when the Syrians came through the Golan. And this really, what happened today, Israeli analysts are saying, is the worst military and intelligence failure since 1973, when the Syrians and the Egyptians gained so much territory so quickly. They were convinced that Israel was drawing them into a trap, and they stopped because they were afraid they were about to be surrounded and slaughtered, which wasn't the case. It's just the Israelis had been caught completely off guard, which gave them time to regroup, counterattack, and hand of God, if you ask me.
I agree. No,
preserving Israel. So this is a question that Israelis are going to want answered very, very soon. How is it that the Mossad, that Shin Bet, and that the IDF got caught so completely flat-footed today? Second, and again, the fact that militant Muslims, violent Muslims, which is mainstream Islam if you adhere to it the way Muhammad taught it, they look for anniversaries like this. I mean, here in the West, we look at 9/11 as, the significance is that's the number you call for emergency when you need police or fire or a rescue. No. September 11th in 1683 was the day the Ottoman army was routed outside the gates of Vienna by King Jan Sobieski of Poland and his winged hussars. That was a crushing defeat that ended the Ottoman threat to Western Europe. If King Jan Sobieski had not won that battle on that day, Rome to the south would have been open, the German states, then Western Europe would have been Muslim in 1683.
I agree.
So that was the significance.
Call it the Battle of Tours. It's all
exactly. And we should have. And certainly the Israeli forces should have been aware that on the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War of 1973, something was bound to happen. But secondly,
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
At the second point, and I think this is the bigger issue here, is that when trying to understand the mindset of people who would do this, who would kidnap grandparents. There was a grandmother who was being paraded around in Gaza, kidnapped from one of the communities along the border fence. Who would do that?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's inhuman, and that's exactly the point. It is inhuman. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and cosmic rulers over this present darkness.
Good point. Years ago, Dan Gordon, he's Jewish, and I've spent not a lot of time with him, but we've interviewed him, more than once. So there was a rapport there, and he was going to speak at a synagogue in Thousand Oaks, which is about half an hour from where I live in the Santa Monica Mountains. So he invited me. So I went. I was the only Christian in the room. We were not in the synagogue. We were in like a meeting room, and Dan was up there, and he was talking about the War of Independence and what happened. And he was telling us a story. And the room was full of Jewish people. You could hear a pin drop. and rabbis are there, and Dan's up there. Even at that time, he was IDF. He was active, in the army, in the IDF, and he was told the story that there was an Egyptian column, tanks and soldiers headed. They were about 2 or 3 hours outside Tel Aviv. This is way back when, right? This is the War of Independence, essentially. And the Israeli Air Force at the time consisted of 3 planes that they had bought at exorbitant prices from Czechoslovakia. They were worth about $3,000 each. They paid upwards of $30,000, and they have to take them apart and smuggle them out piece by piece by piece, and then reassemble them in Israel, which they did. So these 3 planes are in the hangar. They've never been flown. They've never been tested. Now, they know the motors start, but they've never been flown. So the pilots, there's no avionics.
Mm-hmm.
They've just got to somehow figure out where they're going. They have machine guns. They can drop bombs from the planes. The 3 planes take off, and they head out to where they think the column is. They find the column of Egyptians, and they strafe them. They fire the bullets. Everything's in disarray. They drop the bombs. Then they return home. The Egyptians think, oh, we're screwed. The Israeli Air Force is going to come and wipe us all out. They turn and they leave. That's the hand of the Lord, in my opinion. That's the hand of God. And then, and I'll never forget this as long as I live, and then Dan said, and one of the remaining pilots is with us here tonight. And the man stood up, and the place went nuts. Women were openly weeping. It was so emotional. I got choked up. I mean, it was very visceral, very emotional, because as an outsider, what I saw was this unbroken 4,000-year, camaraderie, this family, if I can use that word. And it was emotional. It was visceral. It was, I'll never forget it. And the pilot, then came up and talked for just a few minutes. But so the point I'm trying to make is, there was a column 2 or 3 hours outside of Tel Aviv. It would have been over. That would have been it. So we know from prophecy that once the Lord regathers the nation of Israel, they will never be removed from the land. We know that. That's why Jesus returns where? Drum roll, Jerusalem. The Mount of Olives, that baby splits in 2. Can't wait to see that.
That's right. That's right.
That's my hope. The Lord's in control. It's been prophesied. We just don't know where it's going to go and how much it's going to escalate.
Amen.
Wait for the rearview mirror.
And we keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem in the meantime, and pray for a quick and peaceful resolution as this unfolds. Just watching some of the news feeds here, the IDF has called up 80,000 reservists.
Yeah,
so
they're all flying in
this
from
is
every place.
Yeah, this is not going to end in the next few hours or few days.
No,
it appears. Eli Marzulli, his website, elimarzulli.net. Of course, you can find him all over the web. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule today in Oklahoma City. Sorry that you won't be in Israel soon, but pray that you and Peggy and your group will be able to get back there safely very, very soon.
And thank you for what you do. Your shows are incredible, and so are you.
Yeah. And we thank you for watching as we keep watch. I'm Derek Gilbert. This is A View from the Bunker from Gilbert House Ministries.